Welcome, curious minds. Today, we're diving into a story that transcends time and challenges the boundaries between reality and the supernatural. A dark legend surrounding an object as ordinary as it is mysterious. Imagine an ancient clock, adorned with intricate details, whose ticking remains silent for years until suddenly it chimes. But this isn't just any sound. It's a single ominous tone that precedes catastrophic events. This is the case of the clock that chimes only once. Stories like this have always fascinated the followers of this channel. You may have noticed that certain names grab more attention when we talk about mysterious objects. Names like the Mirror of Dorian or the Stolen Letter always generate engagement. And today we're unraveling another intriguing chapter. The clock in question was first discovered in the early 19th century in a small European village. Its original owner was an eccentric watchmaker known only as Monsieur Laurent. He claimed the clock could predict tragic events, but no one took his word seriously. However, everything changed on that fateful winter night. When the clock chimed, for the first time, something terrible happened. A devastating fire consumed half the village, leaving behind only ashes and unanswered questions. Now, imagine living in that era, hearing that strange and unfamiliar sound coming from such a familiar object. Would you feel fear, curiosity, or perhaps a mix of both? In the next minute, we'll delve into the stories surrounding this enigmatic artifact. We'll investigate historical records, testimonies, and theories that attempt to explain the unexplainable. Before we proceed, I'd like to ask you to subscribe to the channel. Your participation is essential for us to keep bringing stories like this. Also, enable notifications so you don't miss any episodes. Returning to our mysterious clock, it's worth noting that it didn't remain confined to that small European village. Over the years, the artifact changed hands multiple times, and each new owner reported increasingly disturbing experiences. One such account comes from an English aristocratic family. After acquiring the clock at an auction, they witnessed its single chime moments before a shipwreck claimed the lives of all passengers aboard a family vessel. These patterns began to catch the attention of paranormal researchers and historians. Some suggest the clock might be connected to a force beyond our understanding, while others believe it's merely a macabre coincidence. But is it really? Can coincidences explain so many tragic events, or is there something more sinister hidden within the gears of this instrument? To understand better, we need to go back to the starting point. The creation of the clock. Who was Monsieur Laurent? Why did he decide to build something so peculiar? And above all, what inspired him? Some local legends say Laurent made a pact with occult forces to gain knowledge of the future. Others claim he stole the design from an ancient manuscript found in an abandoned abbey. Regardless of the truth, one thing is certain. The clock continued, chiming throughout the centuries, marking tragedies and leaving a trail of mystery wherever it went. Now let's rewind to the moment it all began. Monsieur Laurent's workshop. Little is known about his personal life, but records indicate he was a solitary man, obsessed with complex mechanisms. Laurent lived isolated in his home workshop, located on the outskirts of the village. Villagers avoided approaching him, fearing his reputation as eccentric and possibly dangerous. However, there was something different about him, something that sparked both fascination and dread. People whispered that Laurent had an almost supernatural ability to repair old clocks and create unique pieces. It was in this atmosphere of mystery that the clock that chimes only once was born. Laurent worked on it for months, refusing to reveal details about its purpose or function. When he finally presented the piece, he said only one sentence. "This clock does not mark time. It foretells destiny." Words that at the time were dismissed as pure fantasy, but then came the night of the fire. The clock chimed for the first time, and the village was never the same again. The few survivors swore the sound was unlike anything they'd ever heard, a deep, almost hypnotic echo. After the disaster, Laurent disappeared without a trace. Some say he fled, overcome by remorse. Others believe he became a victim of his own creation. The clock, however, remained. Abandoned amidst the rubble, it was recovered by a traveling merchant who sold it to an antique collector. This marked the beginning of a journey that would span continents and generations. Each new owner faced inexplicable situations, all preceded by the clock's unique sound. Among these accounts stands out the case of Lady Margaret Ashworth, a British noblewoman who acquired the artifact in 1872. She wrote detailed letters about her experience, which are now considered precious research sources. According to Lady Ashworth, the clock remained silent for years after arriving at the mansion. Until one rainy afternoon, it emitted that unmistakable sound. 2 days later, one of her carriage horses reared violently, causing a fatal accident. Although Lady Ashworth survived, she could never look at the clock the same way again. These accounts help establish a chilling pattern. Whenever the clock chimed, something terrible happened. But was it the cause, or merely a sign? In the next minute, we'll explore the theories proposed over the years. Some involve scientific concepts, while others flirt with the paranormal. One of the first hypotheses suggested by scholars was that the clock might be sensitive to environmental changes. Subtle variations in atmospheric pressure, temperature, or even seismic vibrations could trigger its unique sound. This theory makes sense at first glance, but it doesn't explain why the clock only chimes before specific tragedies. If it were purely environmental, it should emit sounds much more frequently. Another line of thought suggests the clock could be connected to some kind of psychic energy. Perhaps it captures intense emotions or unconscious premonitions of its owners. This idea gains strength when analyzing cases like Lady Ashworth's. She reported in her letters feeling an oppressive sensation in the days leading up to the accident, though she didn't know what it meant. However, some argue the clock is nothing more than a macabre coincidence. Critics of this view claim our minds tend to seek patterns where they may not exist. But is it really possible that so many tragic events are linked to the same object? By mere chance, for many, this explanation seems insufficient. Among the bolder theories is the idea that the clock serves as a portal to another dimension. In this scenario, its sound would be a warning coming from another plane of existence. This hypothesis, though fascinating, lacks concrete evidence. Moreover, it raises even deeper questions. Who or what is sending these warnings? Some researchers speculate that Monsieur Laurent himself may have invoked some entity during the clock's creation. Local legends mention rituals conducted in his workshop on moonless nights. Regardless of the truth, one thing is certain. The clock continued changing hands over the centuries, always accompanied by disturbing stories. One such case involved an American collector named Henry Whittaker. He acquired the clock in 1923 during a trip to Europe and brought it to the United States. Shortly after its arrival, the clock chimed for the first time on American soil. 3 days later, the stock market collapsed, marking the beginning of the Great Depression. Although Whittaker denied any connection between the two events, rumors began to circulate. Many believed the clock had predicted the economic crisis that would devastate millions of lives. This episode further solidified the artifact's sinister reputation. And now, with each new chapter of its history, the mystery only deepens. In the next minute, we'll investigate the clock's current whereabouts and the modern legends surrounding it. Fast forward to today, thanks to social media and forums dedicated to the paranormal, recent accounts about the artifact have begun to surface. Some people claim to have seen the clock at clandestine auctions, while others swear they've found it in remote antique shops. One such account comes from an anonymous user who posted photos of the clock on a popular forum. The images show the object in excellent condition, with intricate details that seem impossible to reproduce. According to the post's author, he bought the clock at an antique shop in Prague. However, after hearing its unique sound, he decided to get rid of it immediately. Interestingly, the user didn't reveal what happened after the sound. He simply vanished from the forum, leaving behind only unanswered questions. Another intriguing case occurred in Japan, where a family reported owning the clock for several generations. They claim it remained silent for decades, until the earthquake and tsunami of 2011. According to the family, the sound was heard just hours before the catastrophe. Since then, the clock has been stored in a safe, and no one in the house dares to touch it again. These modern accounts reinforce the idea that the clock remains active, moving discreetly around the world and marking tragedies along the way. But where is it now? Some theories suggest it was acquired by wealthy and eccentric collectors who keep it safely within their mansions. Others believe the clock was confiscated by government agencies interested in studying its unique properties. This hypothesis, though unlikely, cannot be ruled out. There's also the possibility that the clock was lost or destroyed. After all, objects so ancient are vulnerable to time and wear. However, many remain convinced it still exists, patiently waiting for the next moment it needs to chime. While that happens, the debate about its origin and purpose continues fervently. Some defend that it's a tool of warning, meant to help humanity avoid disasters. Others, however, believe it's a curse, created to punish those who dare interfere with the natural flow of time. Whatever the truth, one thing is certain. The clock that chimes only once remains one of history's greatest enigmas. In the next minute, we'll explore the philosophical and moral implications of an object like this. Throughout this journey, we've realized that the clock that chimes only once goes beyond a simple mechanical piece. It challenges our perceptions of time, fate, and free will. Imagine for a moment that you possess an object capable of predicting tragedies. Would you use that information to try to change the future? Or would you accept the inevitable, fearing you might make things worse? These are fundamental questions that arise when analyzing the legend of the clock. They force us to reflect on the role we play in our own lives. For some, the clock represents definitive proof that fate is immutable. No matter what we do, certain events are etched into the gears of the universe. For others, it symbolizes hope that we can alter our path, provided we have the courage to face the warnings. This duality is what makes the clock story so fascinating. It places us face to face with dilemmas that transcend logic and touch the human soul. Moreover, the clock raises important ethical questions. If someone knew in advance about an impending tragedy, what responsibility would they have to warn others? Take, for example, the collector Henry Whittaker. If he truly believed the clock had predicted the Great Depression, did he have a moral duty to alert someone? These reflections lead us to consider the emotional weight of living with an object like this. It would be an unbearable burden to carry the knowledge of future calamities. Perhaps that's why so many owners of the clock opted to get rid of it after hearing its sound. They simply couldn't handle the pressure. However, some argue that the true power of the clock lies in its ability to unite people. After all, it reminds us of our shared fragility in the face of the unknown. In an increasingly divided world, stories like this invite us to look beyond our differences and recognize what unites us: the universal desire to understand the incomprehensible. And perhaps that's exactly why the clock that chimes only once continues to capture the imagination of so many people around the globe. Before we proceed to the next minute, I'd like to ask you to share your own theories about the clock in the comments. What do you think it really is? A tool of warning, a curse, or something completely different? In the next part, we'll conduct a comparative analysis, exploring other mysterious objects that, like the clock, challenge our understanding of reality. Stay tuned. Now that we've delved deeply into the mystery of the clock that chimes only once, it's time to broaden our perspective. There are other enigmatic objects around the world that share similar characteristics. One such object is the famous Mirror of Dorian. According to legend, it reflects not only your image, but also the darkest secrets of your soul. Whoever stares into the mirror for too long may never be the same again. Like the clock, the mirror has a sinister reputation. It doesn't act directly, but seems to influence events around it. People who possess the mirror reported drastic changes in their lives, many of them tragic. Another intriguing artifact is the stolen letter, an apparently ordinary document that supposedly reveals information about the future of whoever reads it. However, these revelations are not always clear or beneficial. These objects, though, different in appearance and origin, have something in common. They defy the laws of physics and logic. They seem to exist in a liminal zone between the real and the supernatural. But what's the unifying factor? Were all these objects created with specific purposes, or are they fragments of something larger, perhaps even cosmic? Some theorists suggest these artifacts are remnants of ancient civilizations that mastered advanced knowledge. Others believe they are physical manifestations of occult forces. Regardless of the explanation, these objects continue to fascinate generations. They remind us that there are mysteries in the world that may never be fully understood. Returning to our clock, it's worth noting that it stands out for its uniqueness. While the mirror and the letter can be used repeatedly, the clock only emits its sound once before each tragedy. This unique characteristic makes it even more terrifying. There's no clear pattern to predict when it will chime again, making every moment of silence potentially agonizing. Moreover, the clock carries with it a sense of inevitability. Even if you know something bad is about to happen, there's nothing you can do to stop it. This leads us to another interesting question. Does the clock choose its owners, or does it simply appear in the hands of people whose lives are about to change drastically? Some legends suggest the clock has a kind of intelligence of its own, guiding itself toward those destined to face great trials. If this is true, then the clock is not just a passive object. It would actually be an active player in its own story, shaping events as it moves through time. In the next minute, we'll explore some of the boldest attempts to study the clock scientifically. What did researchers discover, and what remains unexplained? Over the years, the clock that chimes only once caught the attention of curious scientists and researchers eager to uncover its secrets. Many tried applying rigorous methods to understand how it works. In the mid-20th century, a group of European physicists gained brief access to the clock. They conducted extensive tests, analyzing everything from its material composition to its response to external stimuli. Surprisingly, the results were inconclusive. Although the clock was made of common materials like brass and wood, its internal mechanism seemed to operate in an incomprehensible way. The scientists noted that the sound emitted by the clock didn't correspond to any known acoustic pattern. It was as if it came from another place, or perhaps another dimension. Another team of researchers, this time composed of psychologists, decided to investigate the emotional impact of the sound on those who heard it. They conducted experiments with volunteers who reported previous experiences with the clock. The results showed that the sound caused a nearly universal, visceral reaction: fear, anxiety, and in some cases even panic. This raised the hypothesis that the sound might be directly manipulating the human nervous system. However, this theory was widely criticized. Critics argued that the reactions could be attributed to psychological suggestion, as participants knew of the clock's sinister reputation. Despite the criticism, other attempts to study the clock continued to emerge. In 2005, a Japanese university used cutting-edge technology to analyze vibrations and frequencies emitted by the object. During the tests, the clock remained silent, frustrating the researchers. However, a few months later, it chimed during a public exhibition, coincidentally hours before a devastating earthquake. This incident sparked heated debates in the scientific community. Some saw it as proof that the clock was sensitive to geological activities. Others argued it was pure coincidence. Among the most controversial attempts was that of a group of American engineers who tried to disassemble the clock to examine its interior. However, they discovered that the parts seemed fused together in some inexplicable way. When asked why they couldn't separate the pieces, the engineers admitted it was as if the metal itself resisted human efforts. This experiment led many to speculate that the clock possessed some kind of supernatural protection. Perhaps Monsieur Laurent incorporated mystical elements into its creation. Another theory suggests the clock was designed to adapt to its surroundings, making it impossible to disassemble without permanently damaging its mechanism. Whatever the truth, it's clear that the clock remains a scientific enigma. No conventional explanation can encompass all aspects of its existence. In the next minute, we'll explore the most recent reports about the clock's whereabouts and the modern stories surrounding this mysterious artifact. In recent years, the clock that chimes only once regained prominence thanks to anonymous reports and videos shared online. These modern stories add new layers to the myth. One of the most talked about cases occurred in 2019, when a video went viral showing the clock at a flea market in Paris. The seller claimed the object had been found in an abandoned attic. The video quickly attracted the attention of collectors and paranormal enthusiasts. However, before anyone could identify the exact location, the seller mysteriously disappeared. Another recent account comes from a young blogger who claims to have inherited the clock from her grandmother. She posted detailed photos of the object on her social media, accompanied by a disturbing description. According to her, the clock remained silent for months, until one night she heard the unmistakable sound echoing through her house. 2 days later, she suffered a serious car accident. Interestingly, the blogger removed all posts related to the clock after the incident. When questioned by her followers, she simply replied, "I can't talk about it." These modern episodes demonstrate that the clock is still active, moving discreetly around the world and leaving trails of mystery wherever it goes. Moreover, they fuel new theories about the artifact's purpose. Some believe it's hunting specific people, while others see it as a guardian of universal balance. This idea gained traction during the 2020 pandemic, when several reports claimed to have heard its sound. Although these reports cannot be verified, they reinforce the narrative that the clock is a constant presence during moments of great uncertainty. Among the most recent rumors is speculation that the clock was acquired by an eccentric billionaire who keeps it in an underground bunker. This theory, though unlikely, captured the imagination of many. Others suggest it was hidden in a secret museum dedicated to mysterious objects. This museum, they say, is accessible only to a privileged few. Whatever the case, the clock remains a powerful symbol of mystery and intrigue. It transcends cultures, eras, and borders, uniting people in search of answers. Before closing this session, I'd like to ask you to share your own theories about the clock's current whereabouts. Where do you think it is now, and what do you think it's predicting? In the next part, we'll explore the cultural impact of the clock and how it influenced films, books, and other forms of art. Get ready to dive into the enduring legacy of this enigmatic object. Throughout the centuries, the clock that chimes only once left its mark not only in history, but also in popular culture. Its legend inspired countless works of art, from novels to movies and TV series. One of the earliest examples comes from Victorian literature, where the clock appeared in Gothic tales as a symbol of inevitable fate. Writers like Edgar Allan Poe and H.P. Lovecraft were influenced by mysterious objects like this. However, it was in the 20th century that the clock gained prominence in other media. Classic horror films began incorporating similar elements, creating narratives centered around objects that predicted or caused tragedies. A notable example is the film The Sound of Fear, 1968, a British production following the story of an antiques dealer who acquires an ancient clock with supernatural properties. Although the script doesn't explicitly mention our clock, the similarities are undeniable. In the 1990s, the clock's legend resurfaced in TV series like The X-Files, which dedicated an entire episode to a mysterious object that emitted sounds before catastrophic events. The episode became one of the most memorable for fans of the series. More recently, the clock inspired video games and interactive stories. In games like The Room, players explore enigmatic objects that defy the laws of physics, often evoking the eerie atmosphere of the original clock. Moreover, the concept of a sound that precedes disaster has become a recurring trope in various forms of entertainment. It's used to create tension and anticipation, keeping audiences on the edge of their seats. Interestingly, the clock's cultural impact isn't limited to entertainment. It has also influenced areas like psychology and philosophy, raising questions about free will and the nature of time. Contemporary philosophers debated whether the clock represents a metaphor for the inevitability of fate, or if it symbolizes humanity's power to predict and perhaps alter the future. These debates transcended academia, reaching social media and digital platforms. Today, the clock is often cited in memes and short videos that blend humor and horror. A viral example is an animated video showing the clock in various apocalyptic scenarios, from alien invasions to global economic collapses. The clock's unique sound echoes in each scene, reinforcing its connection to tragic events. This type of content demonstrates how the myth of the clock remains relevant, even in an era dominated by technology and science. It proves that some stories never age. Moreover, the clock has been used as an educational tool in schools and universities. Teachers use it to discuss topics like superstition, mythology, and the role of objects in shaping cultural identities. The clock's legacy can also be seen in modern artistic movements. Visual artists and musicians often draw inspiration from its sinister aura to create works that challenge conventions. We've reached the end of this journey through the mystery of the clock that chimes only once. But before we say goodbye, I'd like to reflect on what makes this story so captivating to so many people. Since the dawn of humanity, we've always been drawn to the unknown. Myths, legends, and stories of mysterious objects fuel our imagination and invite us to question the limits of reality. The clock, in particular, touches something deep within us. It represents time, an implacable force that governs our lives, but remains intangible and incomprehensible. When we think of the clock chiming before a tragedy, we're forced to confront our own mortality. It reminds us that no matter how hard we try to control our lives, there are things beyond our reach. Moreover, the clock awakens our insatiable curiosity. We want to understand how it works, who created it, and what its purpose is. This quest for answers is intrinsic to the human condition. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect is the ambiguity. The clock offers no clear explanations. It simply exists, challenging us to interpret its signs and messages. This lack of certainty creates space for infinite possibilities. Each person who encounters the legend of the clock can shape it according to their own beliefs and experiences. For some, it's a tool of warning. For others, a curse. Some see it as a reflection of our collective fears, while others consider it a masterpiece of human engineering. Regardless of interpretation, the clock continues to serve as a mirror of our society. It reflects our anxieties, our hopes, and our relentless search for meaning. That's why stories like this have the power to unite people from different backgrounds and cultures. They remind us that, despite our differences, we share fundamental questions about the universe and our place in it. Throughout this video, we explored theories, accounts, and speculations about the clock. But in the real magic lies in the journey, the conversations, debates, and reflections that arise around this legend. I'd like to thank all of you for following this story to the end. Your support is essential for us to keep bringing content like this. Don't forget to like, comment, and share this video with other curious minds. Before closing, I'll leave you with one final question. If you had the chance to own the clock that chimes only once, would you accept it? Or would you prefer to avoid the weight of carrying such a mysterious object? Leave your answers in the comments and keep participating in the discussions. This channel is made for people like you, curious, questioning, and passionate about untold stories. Until the next adventure, keep your minds open and your hearts ready to explore the unknown. Thank you for being here, and remember, not everything can be explained, and perhaps that's exactly what makes life so fascinating.